what I'm talking about. You can have some rough sex one night and say, oh, I think I hurt myself. And then by the next night, shit be healed. It's the fastest healing thing on. Some of y'all that remember that shit. It's the fastest healing thing going. You know, you can say, oh, damn, I done went a little too rough, and I done split some shit up. And then the next night or night after next, it's healed. You see what I'm saying? It's healed. It's healed. Now, we got to teach our people these. So the ancient, so the Typhonian, we'll get back into some of that good stuff in a minute. But the Typhonian Egyptians were your tantric cults that taught all that male reproductive and the sexual and all that. So now, the pre-dynastics, these people could look into the future and they say, now look, we're going to have problems with all this kind of thing of people in sexual embrace and teaching the people all the sex thing on the monumental walls. They knew that other cultures that was going to later come up in there, they were going to have invasions for 1,000 years. And those people coming in there, they were going to have problems with seeing all of that sexual thing, which you're supposed to have, and they would have torn down all the monuments. So they made a choice. They had a big war a lot of times on sexual practice, and the Typhonians went on up into Babylonia, Samaria, what you would call that particular thing, and later on, the advanced cults basically traveled on into India. And that's your pre-dynastic Egyptians. And they preserved the Kama Sutra and the mass techniques of the sexual tantric things. You see what I'm saying? Of the sexual tantric things. You see, but they knew that they would be isolated up there. The people who conquered them was the British in the 1800s, and by that time the British, they were into, hey, let's try to learn all we can. Because they had gone through a couple of years of masonry and the whole thing with the Moors. But early on, they knew that none of those temples would have survived. Look what they did with the ones that they had. They had one on the face of Mem. Look, you know, Mem is the god with the penis sticking out, and most of them are chiseled off most of the temples. But even other things they defaced so much in Egypt. So that's why the dynastic cult survived in India. Yeah. Even the Sphinx, but I'm talking about even on the sexual thing. If they blow off noses, they would really have problems with this. People who, especially cults that would later on come in and they were taught that their spirituality is to be against sex. You see where I'm coming from here? To be against sex. But the dynastic cults, they had different sexual practices and things like that. Things like that. Y'all all right? Now, let me do one thing right quick. Because what we got to do is we always dealing with time. Let's do a question and answer, then jump back into the lecture, because I'm going to get some questions on some feedback. This is the way we're doing things now, you know, because I don't want people to leave, and we can jump back in the lecture. We do some stuff like that. What's that?
What's that about those Atlanta murders? Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting. The Atlanta murders was about interferon. Interferon was the most expensive thing on the planet. It's like $1 million a vial back then, and it's supposed to be this healing thing, and all this stuff that has come out of the testicles or the genitals of black people, of black children, and that's what that was about. Also, your first inception of your melatonin programs that they have laid on these melatonin pills. All that came from the Atlanta child murders. As a matter of fact, in 1996, a sister came to one of my lectures. And she came up and doing the intermission, and she said, they came and got me to see one of my daughters. Now, I heard this before. She said they came and got me to see my daughter, and she was still living, and she looked like she was 90 years old. Now, she told me that in 1996. So they didn't kill them all outright. It's just like Aaliyah. Aaliyah, what they did with her is the same thing that Quaker Mutwa talks about in his thing, where he talks about they could get the energy of a young girl and put them in the bed with an old man, and they can draw her energy. Aaliyah, what they did with Aaliyah is, although they sacrificed her, they did the movie Akasha, which means black substance and it's also a goddess in India and in Africa. They got Aaliyah, they didn't really kill her right off. What they did was they took Aaliyah, and they was doing sex rituals with her for maybe about a year or two after she so-called supposedly died. Okay. You know, as a matter of fact, the sister I'm with, she got this thing where a lot of dead people show up complaining to her when they die. So she said Aaliyah visited her and was telling her about this. But it makes a lot of sense now. So they do all kinds of stuff like that with the whole Atlanta child murder. As a matter of fact, there's a cheap movie called Red Ink. It's called Red Ink. And in that movie, the guy says the same thing. They say, we saw one of these, it was a woman or a guy in the movie said, we saw one of the children. They were still living, but they looked like they were 70 years old. So they was doing these experiments. Now the scene has shifted. Because remember they caught the SARS. The SARS was going on out in Iraq. The word SARS comes from, it's another word. One of the names for Osiris is called SARS. SARS. The SARS means the Osirises. And they said we can, all of a sudden they said we could cure the SARS a week after the war ended, and they said interferon. So they're using this interferon again, but see, now they don't have to experiment with the inner city children here. Interferon, they got wars going on Africa where the average age of the soldiers are 7 years old, and 8 and 9. So therefore they get them killed, and they're taking all that interferon, and like I said, the melatonin thing that's going on and all. So all of that, those deaths that you see in the 75,000 Africans dying a month in Africa is not based on AIDS. They're using all that for the melanin research and the melatonin programs. You see what I'm saying? And all this in the melatonin programs, they're doing that now. You see. So this is what's going on over there. You see, so that's what that whole research thing was. It was for all different types of things. Even crack research came out of that because the crack was laced with something.